Hey everyone, we are live in the nest with the amazing Gabe Cole Novoa, who is the author of The Wicked Bargain, which is possibly one of the best books I've read so far this year. I have loved it, and you're going to love it too, and we're going to be talking all about it tonight. Gabe, thank you so much for joining us in the nest.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry for those last weird 10 minutes.
No, it was good.
No one.
No apologies necessary.
So, Gabe, for anyone who has never been on YouTube and never seen any of your videos before and might be living under a rock, can you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Gabe Cole Novoa. My pronouns are he, him, and I write queer YA. My most recent release, The Wicked Bargain, released yesterday. It's a YA Latina pirate fantasy about a transmasculine, non-binary teen pirate hiding secret magic on a mission of revenge, redemption, and revolution in the aftermath of a deal with the devil gone wrong. And next year, I actually have two more books coming out, one of which hasn't been announced, and the other is a queer Pride and Prejudice retelling called Most Ardently.
That's a great title.
Oh, thank you. I
We'll
cannot
delve
take
a
credit
little
for
bit
it.
more into that later, but I have to say, so it's just a little pirate fantasy then,
Yes, just a little pirate fantasy.
filled with demons and devils and actual stakes,
Yes, and
which was
magic, of
horrible,
course.
by the way.
Well, that's the idea. The stakes have to be
I know,
horrible,
right?
otherwise they're
I
not
wanted to be
stakes.
emotionally broken on a random Tuesday. So, Gabe, in addition to being an author, you ran a successful YouTube channel over at Bookish Pixie. And I know that you haven't posted in 9 months, like you said, but it still counts. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And it's because you're now, you're publishing and you're using your MFA and stuff like
Yes,
that. So you're an author
that's
now.
right.
Okay. You don't need to be
Definitely.
keeping up with that content, but you're still a successful YouTuber. Um, what has it been like, though, to watch social media evolve as a reader and a writer?
Yeah, I'd say it's been equal parts cool and terrifying. I've used so many social media platforms over the years. When I first started out, I ran a pretty popular writing blog when blogging was cool. If any of you remember when blogging was cool, then that fell out of favor when my Twitter presence was starting to grow. And it was around that time that I started up the YouTube channel. And so that was really fun, and I kept up with it pretty consistently up until the point that I got a full-time day job that made finding time to film on top of my publishing deadlines a little tricky, I think understandably. So, I mean, now Twitter is a volatile platform to say the least, and TikTok is huge, though I'm still figuring out the best way for me to organically build a platform there. But I think ultimately, social media is always changing and growing, and sometimes a platform feels natural for you, and other times there's more of a learning curve. So at the moment, I'm just curious to see what platform eventually overtakes Twitter as users look for something a little more stable.
Yeah. I mean, well, Twitter was going downhill, so really we only have Elon to
Yeah.
thank at this point. He's done a
Yeah,
fantastic job so far.
definitely.
Um, I have to say, like myself, TikTok is terrifying.
Yeah. I like it. I haven't figured it out quite yet, I think. I'm still figuring it out.
I have a feeling like I'm not cool enough for TikTok.
Not yeah, well, I don't think a lot of people are cool enough for TikTok, but they're still on TikTok.
You telling me I should just go for it then.
Yeah, totally.
I should be my best cringy self.
You'd be surprised the amount of cringe that seems to go viral on TikTok, though.
That is true. Do I want to go viral for cringe on TikTok?
Well, that's a different story.
I'm wondering if my boss is watching. Like, how cringe could I possibly go? Karina's like, stop.
I think my problem with TikTok is whenever I go to be inspired and kind of figure out what I want to do, I just get too distracted by all the content and I end up not thinking of what I want to do myself. So,
I completely agree. I have to ask, what's the weirdest
oh
TikTok that
no,
you've ended up on?
that I have
Like, what
seen on
TikTok
TikTok.
community?
Well, right now, TikTok has noticed that I like political TikTok. I like queer TikTok, of course, and language-related TikToks, which is makes sense, but I would not have predicted that going in. And so, interestingly, the only book content I currently have are people that I'm actually actively following. Otherwise, TikTok is like, you don't care about books. Look at these cats and language people and politics TikTok. That's what you're obviously here for. And I guess they're right because I spend too much time on it anyway.
Same. I'm on capybara TikTok, which is a very niche one right
Oh,
now. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's just a capybara song that repeats over and over and over again. I don't want to be there. I've never liked any of the videos, but I guess TikTok has decided now that I am a capybara fan.
I mean, who's not? Not of that song, maybe, but like the ones that are in the hot water with the lemons on their heads, they're adorable.
So you too are on capybara TikTok.
I know. I've seen it other places. I assume it's on TikTok, but go
Guys,
look for
I've
it.
never been to
capybaras are
this
bigger
corner
on
of
TikTok than
TikTok.
we've ever realized.
Apparently.
Capybaras are cute.
I don't know.
TikTok
They
is it's
just
really too much about me. So I'll send a TikTok to a friend. I'll be like, this is hilarious. And they'll be like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, oh.
Well, I thought it was funny.
I thought it was, yeah. Now you know too much about me. Let's forget this conversation ever happened.
How much of a friend do I have to be to receive offside TikToks from you, out of curiosity?
I mean, I guess if we're texting, and then probably you're going to get some offside TikToks from me.
We'll talk after the chat. I'm on Pedro Pascal TikTok,
Oh,
but I think
want to
everybody
be.
is, whether they
That
want
sounds
to be
great.
or not.
Yes. I haven't been the last few days, so we'll see that. But I would love to be on Pedro Pascal TikTok. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's just one after the other after the other.
I'm just gonna have to like whisper into my phone Pedro Pascal as I'm scrolling and see what happens.
That has happened to me. I once said the word NyQuil and then immediately got a TikTok ad for NyQuil.
There you go.
We should be concerned, but really, I'm just impressed. I like having my own entertainment at my fingertips. Yes, learn more about
It
me.
is. Yeah.
Didn't I tell you we'd go on tangents?
Yes, and I said let's do it. So here we are.
As long as you're having fun. As we can see, you seem to love sharing your knowledge. Would you?
About TikTok? No.
Do you like how I segued right in naturally into that next question?
That was great. Yes.
Would you ever consider creating a workshop for aspiring writers?
Yeah, so funny you should ask. Before the pandemic, I actually taught some writing classes at a local writing center, and I really loved it. It was such a great experience. My students were wonderful, and getting to watch their writing improve over the course of the class was really awesome, which is something I also really loved about freelance editing, which I did for a while. But then COVID happened, which made in-person teaching really risky for me. And then my part-time day job became a full-time day job. So unfortunately, I basically no longer had time to do any virtual classes even. So if one day I am ever fortunate enough to write full-time, I'd definitely love to pick up teaching classes again, because I really did have a great time doing it, and I do miss it.
I think you should. You're going to.
I hope so. It was a great
I'm usually
experience.
really good at picking out the authors who I know are going to like, you got to get into that day job.
Yeah, yes, I do. Eventually.
Shaughnessy too. Shaughnessy, you need to get out of your day job. I got out of mine, and it's been wonderful. So
I need to get out of mine, I think.
I highly recommend just rage quitting and doing
It
what you
can
love.
happen tomorrow. We'll see.
Well, it's definitely one of the capital G goals, so we'll see.
This book,
Yes.
look at this cover. It's so good.
Thank you. I love it. I really do.
So The Wicked Bargain is the most refreshing take on pirate fantasy that I've read in a long time. And I know that I wrote that in the question. You read it beforehand, but it's true. It's true. I know that in the acknowledgments, you intended for it to be queer. You intend for all of your books to be queer and Latinx point of view. can you tell us a little bit more about pirate lore and history that inspired the story for you?
Yeah, well, first, thank you. Even when I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is so nice. So thank you. That was super kind. I remember many years ago learning about matelatage, which is a kind of civil union between two male pirates, in which they essentially agreed that if one of them died, the other gets all of their belongings. And while sometimes it was purely financial, the practice was also known to be romantic or sexual as well at times. And it was pretty common and well accepted among pirate ships. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting bit of history I've never heard about before. It seemed like another example of queerness in history that we just don't hear very much about. So from that point forward, I was like, well, now I want to write about queer pirates. But it wasn't until a couple years later when I started doing research on Mexican and Cuban myths that I came across a couple deal with the devil stories. And I thought, you know, a deal with the devil story would work really well with the pirate story. So then, as I was doing more brainstorming and thinking about time periods, I thought it'd be great to be able to shine some light on an incredibly important period in Latin America and the Caribbean's history, namely the mid 1800s, when many, many countries in that area revolted against the colonizers and became independent nations.
So you did a heck of a lot of research.
Yes, I did.
Especially when it came down to materials, food, and architecture.
Yes,
Can you tell us what about your approach to world building?
definitely. So generally, when I'm starting a new book, whether it's historical or something totally fantasy, I start by building myself a general foundation that I can use while I'm first drafting, which for me basically means giving myself enough information to understand what the world looks like and feels like, even if everything is still a bit blurry and I don't know the exact details yet. So I'm not one of those writers who writes like a world building Bible beforehand. Huge shout out to those writers, but I can't do it. I get too lost in the details and lose the story if I do that. So once I have kind of my like blurry, fuzzy foundation, I then start writing the first draft. And once I've written that and I have a solid idea of what I need to know, I then dive into the details and I'll research specific elements that I need. So for the Wicked Bargain, that was researching pirate life and life at sea, information about the revolutions in Latin America in the 1800s, the technology that was available, the language that was used at the time, superstition, food, clothes, etc. And so I learned a lot about what life was like for real historical pirates and strategies they used to trick merchant ships, which was extremely cool. And I learned that one fun fact was that, especially at the beginning of the golden age of piracy, stealing from merchant ships was like laughably easy because they weren't really guarded. The merchant ships were essentially sent out with like a skeleton crew, for example, and the pirate ships had a lot of people on them, so it was easy pickings. So I picked up a lot of cool details like that. And once I had those details, I then went back in and added them in over the course of many, many layered revisions.
So even back then, capitalism was still trying to get theirs by running skeleton crews.
Yeah.
Not just like just like Target. My
Yeah.
goodness, this is
Except they learned the hard way that that probably wasn't the best strategy. So
Yeah, I wonder how long it took before piracy was still new, sort of,
right.
and they went,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah. From what I read, even as things changed over time, like pirate ships still had like way more crew than they ever really put on merchant ships. So like they eventually became like a little more difficult, but even then it wasn't terribly hard.
well, because pirate ships are effectively like a community, right?
Right,
It's like a little
right.
town on a ship.
Exactly. Yes. And merchant ships were not. They were not that at all. They were
No.
more about the goods that were on the ship than the people. So
And
I'm
probably
thinking
not
about
really
the people
binary.
back in Europe that would have had to get like those letters. Like, hey, we got accosted at sea by
oh.
these people. And can you imagine like never having heard about pirates before?
Yeah,
You'd
for
be
the
like,
first
I beg your
time.
pardon. So like if it was like the first thing, if it was like a new thing and it went, I don't know, the 16th century version of viral, like
Yeah. Oh
I
my
wonder
God.
how it affected
I thought of that.
like insurance, corporate insurance.
That's
Did-
true.
did-
I mean,
were
it was
pirates-
already bad with
sorry,
like,
were merchant ships insured? There, Gabe, you did a lot of research for this novel.
I didn't go into insurance. I wasn't writing from a point of view of a merchant.
Yeah, it really wasn't. It's not interesting.
I can't say.
Poor Gabe is like,
I
got
can't
the
say that. I know
beforehand,
that
and-
a lot of ships didn't make it before pirates just because of very long journeys and storms and getting lost. So that was already risky before pirates happened.
I do imagine that there's somebody that went, pirate sounds made up. Krakens, that's for sure. That's what it was.
Yes.
Part of me would like to almost go back to the point where science really was made up. And
Right.
Oops, you ran into that dragon on the edge of the map.
Well, then you'd have to be careful because they'd think you were a witch for knowing too much.
That's, yeah, geez. More in this novel, constantly.
Gee,
Imagine me under constant threat of like being found out as a witch.
Yep. Except the twist is you actually have magic, so surprise.
That's the stakes that we talked about earlier, and we'll get a little bit into that. But one thing I noticed, and so did my Google Home Mini, was that the Spanish language is interwoven in the story in what feels like a very deliberate way that shoves the reader's need for instant cultural explanation to the side. I felt completely immersed in Mars world because of this. I was forced to learn. What made you want to write that so organically for you?
Yeah, I mean, there are several reasons why I decided to include Spanish throughout the book. First, it just made sense because the book takes place in the Caribbean and the cast is nearly entirely Latina. So, given the time period of the 1800s, they would have been speaking Spanish. But I also wanted to weave it in because that's what felt the most natural to me. So, fun fact, I learned Spanish before I learned English, but then as I grew older, my immediate family started using English more than Spanish, and so I ended up forgetting a bunch of it. Which means when I was surrounded by my larger family, I was surrounded by a lot of Spanglish conversations. So conversations that were primarily in Spanish, but then we'd go to English and back and forth and so on. And I would often try to keep up with the Spanish, but if I couldn't remember how to say something, I'd just switch over to English. I'm like, that was just normal. That was how it was. So for me, doing the opposite now as an adult, which was writing a book in English, but then weaving Spanish into it where appropriate, just felt really familiar and natural to me. And I think the last reason I also wanted to is I think in the US, especially, Spanish is often overlooked as like a so-called interesting language, in large part because of racism, of course, but also because of how common it is, especially in certain parts of the country. So using Spanish deliberately in the book felt, kind of like a reclamation of sorts to me.
I think it's a beautiful language.
I think so too.
I think so too, and I'm Canadian, so I don't have a lot. There's not a lot of exposure to the Spanish language. Obviously, we are half a French-speaking nation up here,
Right.
and so I will be honest. I spent most of the time going, "Hey Google, what does this mean?"
Oh, I love that though.
And I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Google can translate from other languages.
That's good to know. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, and I kind of want to
Technology,
go back
man.
and do a reread and like annotate it for myself, so that I can just have like the explanations that I know, and it's like a little bit more organic for me. But what I really appreciated was that you didn't explain it for people.
Yeah.
We were talking about that.
You're like, huh, I'm Latina. Deal with it.
And when an author does
I
that,
love
they will
that.
kind of include, and here's what that means. Nope. Figure it out yourself.
I don't want to do it because when you do understand Spanish, it's unnecessary. Like you're repeating what you said over again, and it's just unnatural. So I mean, I figured I didn't put anything that was like vital in the Spanish that like if a reader decided not to look it up, they're gonna miss a vital plot point. But the stuff that I did put in, I figured, if somebody wants to know what it is, they can look it up, and if not, they're not gonna miss anything super important that they're not gonna understand the book with. And there we go.
I'm just one of those folks that reads, and I'm like frustrating like that. Like I remember being younger and looking up like the Elvish stuff in Lord of the Rings. Like,
Elvish.
oh yeah.
Where is this? I want it. Tell me.
Kristen says it's actually a sign of intelligence that someone can code switch so naturally from one language to another. Yes, Gabe is entirely too intelligent to be speaking with us we're grateful to have him in our presence this evening.
Why, thank you.
Paula says that this book sounds amazing. Can't wait to check it out. Interested to see the details. Well, we're going to be talking a little bit more about that.
Me next. There you go.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about Mars Magia. Is that the right way to say that?
Magia.
Magia. Okay. And what inspired it? Was it important to you to have Mars Magia express duality in ice and fire?
Yeah, so Mars Magia is interesting because that was one aspect that wasn't really planned when I first started writing at the very beginning. I knew that I wanted magic involved in some way, but it wasn't until that I sat down and wrote the first chapter that I started to get a sense for how Mars Magia would work. So I wouldn't say that it was important that their Magia was fire and ice specifically, more that that particular Magia is what naturally came out of Mar's character when I was first getting to know them.
And there is a lot of duality in the character. So given that it wasn't deliberate, it felt like kind of beautifully natural.
Yeah, I
case.
think it's nice when that happens. I think a lot of times, even when I don't necessarily know that I'm doing something at the very beginning, like I can usually tell 2 or 3 revisions, and so I'm like, oh yes, this all makes sense. Like it's come together. I think our subconscious like knows what it's doing more than I do sometimes. Which is pretty cool.
And I like that as a reader. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I can pick out that maybe the author had done that. And then, of course, I get to talk to authors like yourself. And I can be like, yes. In this case, no. But I'm going to count it as a yes because it was definitely your subconscious. That's what
I mean, it was refined in revisions. It's not that I never noticed it. It was just, it wasn't something that I planned out from the very beginning. It just came out naturally through the book, which was neat. I honestly really love it when that happens. It's when it starts to take a life of its own. It's cool.
Now, I'm going to throw in a question that isn't written on the sheet.
Oh, no. Okay.
I want to know whether or not anybody or any character in specifically inspired the character of Bass.
I wouldn't say it was any one particular person. I will say it was, at the beginning at least, just like a compilation of characters that I've enjoyed reading over time. So like, I really always enjoyed snarky characters. I've enjoyed the kind of like cinnamon roll romantic characters, and also the characters who like seem super arrogant at first, but then you get to know them and you're like, oh, you're not arrogant. You were just like being show offy because you think I'm cute. So it was honestly just like a combination of just like things I really like. And then as I continued revising, was more of getting to know his character and understanding that like, okay, he's somebody who comes off as very arrogant at first and maybe a little bit much at the beginning, but it's just because like this is just part of his personality. He's an outgoing person. He's somebody who wants to make friends like immediately. He's like latches onto someone who is his age on the ship, which is a whole new cool thing. And because he's a sweetheart, he develops a crush very quickly and then doesn't really know how to deal with that. So he just becomes more annoying. And I loved every part of that.
I'll preface this with I haven't had a chance to get all the way through yet, but what I have read so far, I adore him. He's hilarious. Especially the cafe.
Yes.
And I won't say anything else.
We can talk about that. That's not really a spoiler, I don't think. That's a very light spoiler.
Yeah. That was another moment that definitely came out naturally while I was writing. I was, I had a point basically in my plot where I was like, Bass really is super annoying and Mark doesn't know what to do with that. And I didn't. I was like, okay. And so the first thing that came to mind was like something that he might ask Mark to do just because he wants to see them all the time. An easy thing is coffee, café. We love our café. And I'm going to say, of course, pirates are going to want their café too. But Bass doesn't actually like it. But that doesn't matter because it means he can keep asking Mark to come bring his coffee over and over and over again. And then, it just becomes even more perplexing to Mark when they learn that actually he doesn't care for it at all. So why is he asking that?
I think that was when I really was like, oh, I love Bass. He's so cute. I get what's happening here.
Well, it also makes
like, what's the most
awkward things
innocent way? What was that?
All of the awkward things you've done. Like, do you remember liking someone when you were younger and doing really weird things just to put yourself in their presence.
That's right. Yes, and in this case, he had the opportunity to make Maud appear in his presence. He just needed an excuse to do it.
Can you imagine being able to summon your crush? I know.
Feels like a lot of power. Yes, I wouldn't have known what to do with that either. It takes a strong personality to not crumble under that kind of pressure.
It's Mahia, right?
Mahia, yes.
Got it. Mar is wonderfully self-aware, and there's even a part in the story, the end, where they stare down the antagonist and ask them why they're so afraid of a 16-year-old who can't control their Maya. It almost breaks the fourth wall because it's so aware, and it was really unexpectedly funny. Did you mean to play with the typical chosen one trope when you were writing Mar?
Yeah, that's something I like to do in general. I do like playing with the chosen one trope. It's such an iconic and overwhelmingly common part of media, but I think it's only been more recently that we've started seeing the so-called chosen one being someone who isn't an allo cis able-bodied white person. So in the Wicked Bargain, it was important for me to be able to say, hey, a trans Latina person can be the hero too. But at the same time, I like to try to keep the trope as fresh as possible. And sometimes that means giving a little self-aware wink to the reader.
You did it more than once in the book.
Yes.
And
it's
I
fun.
love that.
I had fun with it. I'm glad.
My favorite parts of like all the Marvel movies is like this the winks, you know, the nods.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm in on the joke too. And I feel almost like I'm along for the ride as an NPC.
Right. I think that's something where with writing advice in general, you know, oftentimes you hear like, don't do this or avoid these tropes or, you know, things that are overused. But the important part, I think, to me is just understanding what is overused and what they are and what it is that people expect, because then you can play with it and you can still use it to your advantage, but in a way that's a little different so it doesn't feel tired and boring.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other tropes that you wanted to use and like pulled yourself back from using when you were
writing? I mean, I think when I first started brainstorming, I was planning to go a little heavier on the enemies to lovers trope, but that ended up not quite fitting exactly. Because I wouldn't say Maud and Bass were ever like full enemies. They were just like, Maud especially was more irritated by Bass's presence than anything else. So that didn't quite fit the way I originally planned, but I still was able to play with it and have fun with it. Maybe another book I'll go a little harder on that.
Is that like an eye emoji? Like wink, wink, nod, nod? Okay.
That's one of my favorite tropes is the enemies to friends, lovers, but they don't have to be like enemies, you know, like
right.
Mar and Baz are great.
It's so much fun to play with. It really is. I do enjoy writing it.
Yeah, when they can just completely annoy each other is really fun.
Yeah.
Well, there's at a few points I wasn't convinced enough to ship them. So it was very well written in that sense, and you know what I mean, and I'm not going to spoil it for people.
Yes.
And it's not like a love triangle. It's not like that at all, but I was like, And this is another one of those things, like, I wouldn't be able to be trusted in that scenario.
Yeah.
Like, when we talk about, like, ships, and the team talked about ships, like, over the Valentine's Day. And they were like, oh, Jordan, like, are you, like, an Alina and the Darkling fan? And I'm like, yes. Do you have any idea how many fanfics I have read with alternate endings? Absolutely, yes, Ben Barnes. Yes. All day, every day. I forget what the other guy's name is. Like, I can't. No, 100%. I forget what the other person's name is.
I won't lie. Ben Barnes has been like a 15-year-long crush for me, so I was pretty thrilled when he was cast as the Darkling.
Between Ben Barnes in Shadow and Bone, Tom Sturridge in Sandman.
Oh, you know, I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list. I do want to see it.
Problem for like the whole mod team when I became obsessed with Sandman. I actually changed the theme of October's game at the last minute to like Worlds of Neil Gaiman just because I wanted to be on the Sandman.
That's amazing.
It became a mega hyperfixation. It was a problem. I'm formally sorry to everyone who was
I don't think we minded. We were on board.
Everybody loves Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
It's true.
And
if you're a bookish person, Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
He could have his own religion and we'd be like, yeah, that's probably fine.
It's probably fine. Yeah, it's Neil Gaiman. It's okay.
But yeah, Ben Barnes. Oh, Ben Barnes in the Narnia movie.
Yes, that was where I discovered him.
That was your awakening?
Teenager. Yes, it was. I was like, oh my God, Prince Caspian. Yeah.
In terms of the Narnia movies, mine was Mr. Tumnus, and once again, we're not going to unpack that.
Oh my God, that's incredible. Mr. Tumnus.
As all millennials, there's always like a source, right?
That's right.
And if you're like, well, did you just have that? I did just have that sitting there. It was.
You were ready.
Somebody says, love Prince Caspian. Yes. And also so true, he could start a cult. I'm not sure who that's about, but anybody that we've previously mentioned start a cult. We're fine.
Probably Neil, but I mean both of them, to be honest.
If Ben Barnes showed up at my door and said, hey, would you join my cult? I'd be like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, okay. It's Ben Barnes. It's probably fine.
Honestly, bookish people can't be trusted with anything. Shaunesay?
Yeah. That's it. Should I go now?
You should go. Yes. For everyone,
whoever can speak. Were there any scenes that you wrote but couldn't include? And can you share them with us?
Yeah, so I don't think I actually have any deleted scenes, but that's actually not unusual for me because I tend to write really bare bones, sparse first drafts and then build them up in revisions to the point where it's really common for me to write like 20 to 40,000 words in revisions. So I don't often end up.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So it means I end up not often having to throw an entire scene out. I wouldn't say I've never had to do it, but at least not for the Wicked Bargain, I didn't. That said, I do often have to rewrite scenes. Sometimes that means changing a lot from the original version. From what I remember, I don't think I had any scenes I couldn't include in this particular book. I did have plenty on the other side of things, though, which is to say something that did not exist in the original draft that I then added. So this is super minorly spoilery. So if you don't want any spoilers at all, plug your ears for like 30 seconds, probably less. But the entire subplot of El Diablo finding Maud after he takes his due and then offering them a way to save the Maud actually didn't exist in the first draft at all.
Oh, wow.
Which is a pretty big subplot. So
yeah. So would that, in that version, then Mar would have been just completely driven by vengeance.
Yeah, they were part of the reason that I needed to add more was because, especially at the beginning where they were like just on the ship and getting to know Bass, they were a little like lost at sea, honestly. No pun intended, but also, yeah. So I needed to give them something a little more focusing, and I knew I wanted to do something with Papa, and it kind of came together that way. But originally, for a while, it was a lot of Mar being sad and angry and confused by Bass without quite getting the goal as quickly as they needed to.
I felt so bad for Mar because like, their world's just been turned upside down. They've lost everyone and everything that is important to them, and here's Baz. But why are you sad? I've saved you.
Yes. Yes, my sad new friend.
You're okay. No. You don't understand. There's more to this.
Initially, Baz does have like major there energy.
Yes. Yep.
It's like, how can you be sad? I'm here.
Exactly. I saved you. I pulled you out of the ocean. Everything's fine now. I mean, we might throw you back into the ocean, but we don't know that yet.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you're our new gopher that's going to do everything that we ask you.
That's right. Yes.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I was thinking, just like if it were in my place, I find that probably like one of the high key most irritating parts of the whole experience of like working your way up your entire life through, a ship hierarchy and then starting at the bottom again for reasons that have nothing to do with you.
Yeah, when basically you were Baz on the other ship.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm actually surprised that Mars showed as much as restraint as they did. Like,
yeah,
that's what a lifetime of hiding your mahia will do to you. You can definitely learn restraint.
I'm afraid that I might have gone kaboom.
Oh my god, I would be burning the world
Set
down.
the
Are
ship
you
on
kidding
fire a
me?
few times. Yeah.
Like many, many times, Mara has been told your magic is like a gift. It's super, super powerful. And they're like, no. And no, they're an amazing person because I would have immediately taken that and rolled with it.
Yeah, I don't know that
I would have set my own empire. Somebody else would be bringing me coffee.
That's right. You could probably pass yourself off as a god if you had the right personality for it.
Literally a dream. Could you imagine? Oh. And at that time period too?
Yeah. I mean, either that or you'd be burned as a witch, so one or the other.
Oh. And then here's the problem. You're always worried about somebody like overturning you. So yeah, no. And there's other people with Mahia in the world. You just don't see very many of them. Yeah, no, maybe that's a gamble I wouldn't take.
Yeah, that's right.
So is this a standalone?
You're starting to understand.
Is this in a standalone or is there going to be more? I'm not all the way through yet, so I'm not sure if there's a series.
Well, we can skip to that. No, so the next book I'm publishing with Random House Children's hasn't been announced yet, so all I'm allowed to say right now is stay tuned.
Is it pirates?
I can't say anything. I just said what I could say.
Okay, so we don't know.
Don't know.
If there's more,
yes,
and you don't have to say, are there different types of mahia than what Mara?
I don't know that I actually. I would love to be able to explore that in a future book. There are different types of mahia. I think Tito actually kind of references it a little bit in The Wicked Bargain. But yes.
Yeah, there's like a whole island of magic people. Yeah. And like good magic peoples too. There's no Diablos or Demonios on there, right?
Yeah, entirely different kinds of magic.
Oh my goodness. Could one of them be like talking to animals?
Sure, why not?
Yeah. Well, you're the author. You can say yes or no. So thank you.
Sorry.
Maybe not, though. I have a funny feeling like if animals could talk, we wouldn't want to know what they have to say.
I mean, I think if certain animals would be far too powerful if they knew that they were that easily understood. I'm thinking of my cats when I say this.
Yeah. Somebody on the internet said that cats are basically snakes with fur. And I've never been able to stop thinking about that.
In what way?
And just in the way that they hiss, they bite, and they have eyes like a snake. Okay. And I think about it now. Often.
I mean, but they also have legs, usually.
If snakes had legs, I would buy the ticket off planet. Just
yeah. Well.
Did you think that having a live chat with Words and Whimsy tonight with an est, you'd be talking about snakes with legs?
No, I also did not think I'd be imagining my cat as a snake with fur. So, lots of new experiences tonight.
Gosh, I hope you're having fun. And I hope the nest is having fun as well.
We did mention tangents.
Yes. Right.
I don't think we mentioned how weird they might be, though.
Well, no, because we didn't want Gabe to leave.
That's true. He could still leave.
Don't leave.
Yeah,
don't leave.
No, I'm having fun. We're good.
Gabe, what do you hope readers take away from The Wicked Bargain?
Yeah, so now on a serious topic that I'm like imagining cats with fur and cats with, as snakes with fur. Anyway, yes. So what I really wanted more than anything is for trans and non-binary readers to feel seen and to know that they can be heroes in stories that have nothing to do with being trans. So I think oftentimes when we start seeing books about marginalized people, they tend to start off overwhelmingly as issue books. And to be clear, I do think issue books are important and they absolutely have their place in the canon. But it can also be somewhat depressing if the only time you see yourself represented as, let's say, a trans person, it's in a book about how difficult it is to be trans. And so this happened to me as a kid with Latina representation, as the only books I was exposed to in school that had Latina protagonists were all about the hardships of poverty and immigration, which again it is important to talk about. But as a 10 or 11-year-old, made me feel like if I wanted to see myself as a hero in a cool fantasy book, I'd have to ignore my heritage to do it. So given all of that, I wanted to make sure that trans and non-binary readers in particular would have the chance to see themselves as a hero in this magical adventure, especially Latina, trans, and non-binary readers. And so much of Mod's journey is about learning to embrace this part of themselves that scares them the most. So for them, it's magic. But for many trans people, that's our trans identity. And it can be terrifying, especially in today's world with everything going on, and especially in the US and the UK, to accept that you're trans and embrace that part of yourself. But in the same way that Maud comes to learn that embracing their magic is what makes them feel whole and can bring so much good to the world, so does embracing every part of who you are.
Well, that certainly came across.
I'm glad.
And I'm glad that we're living in a time where we can have these stories and they can be wonderful and fun. And I think the very first time I ever saw a non-binary character just in a wild fantasy sci-fi novel, totally just out there being amazing with absolutely no, additional allegory about difficulties of being trans or non-binary, was when I read Once and Future. And I love Corey McCarthy and A.R. Capetta, and the whole nest knows this. They're like, he and they are like the most wonderful people. And
they're great.
And it kind of paved the way for these novels, and I like seeing them now because I'm non-binary and I want to see myself in novels, and I want to see different variations of people like that in novels, and I love it. And what I hope too is that people can see bits of themselves in Mar, no matter who they are, and kind of like find some familiarity with the character. Because I think that kind of brings a greater acceptance when somebody can go, hey, you too? I thought I was the only one.
Right.
So I'm with you. Because I love it. And I'm probably not going to stop talking about it because I'm that sort of person. Now that we got the tears and the seriousness out of the way, we're going to get silly. And everybody's like, what do you mean? Because we've already been silly.
I still haven't answered number 8 though, because when I skipped, I didn't mean to skip, and I like that character.
Well, you already asked it though.
But we didn't talk about that character, did we?
No, but we're not allowed to talk about it.
Okay.
I promised the answer was going to be exactly the same.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Plus, this one's more important.
Okay. Good.
Okay, Gabe. What favor would you ask of a demonio? Not a Diablo. We won't do that high stakes, okay?
Okay.
If there were no serious consequences. Because we learned in the book that there doesn't have to be a big serious consequence.
Yes, it doesn't have to be. I will say to answer this question that I'm imagining a world where there just aren't ever serious consequences to these deals, because otherwise I'd be way too chicken to make a deal. But in this imaginary world where there are no consequences, I don't know that a demonio would have enough power to end the pandemic, so I might need a Diablo for that deal. But if I only had access to a demonio, I would ask them to make me and my family totally immune to COVID, because that would be really nice, and I would love that. So.
I would love that for you. I hope demonios exist. So I can be like,
Yeah.
yo, I know this person Gabe. He's awesome. Make sure his family doesn't get COVID, or him too.
Please.
I would ask to talk to animals, and then I would regret my decision.
Honestly, this deep in the pandemic, I might be willing to risk a few bad consequences for the kind of immunity.
I'm not sure I want to know what my cat's saying.
What would you choose with no consequence? Just like a little thing. I can, yeah, you.
Me?
I was concerned that you were hesitating because there were so many like dark things.
What would I choose? Gosh, I don't know. I don't know. There's so many things. I mean, all of my big ones would be like, stop the wars and stop. Just make everyone accept everyone. I know. I don't know. I'm not fun. I'm no fun.
Alternatively, I'd like to travel back to 2018 and go to the Oscars to watch Helen Mirren ride a jet ski. And I know that is a very specific wish.
Okay. I can get on board with
It's like, what's going on?
No, I love that. That is such a fun answer.
Shaunesay?
I got put on the spot.
Okay, we are gonna circle back to that for you, but you can ask the next question.
Okay. What would your position likely be within a pirate crew?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I laughed when I saw this question because I was like, oh God, I'm so unequipped to be a pirate. So the answer that I eventually came up with is like cook, maybe. I wouldn't say that I love cooking, but I'm decent at it. And it's the only skill I can think of that would be useful on a pirate ship. Unless the crew wanted some like crocheted scarves and beanies, because then I could hook them up. But I don't think that's an official pirate position, sadly. So...
But it should be.
It should be, yes.
Is that what the yarn stuff is behind you?
Oh yes, that is my sorry, we're backwards here. That is my yarn wall. Yes.
It also looks like a piece of art.
Yeah,
knowing you,
I
that
literally started. I mean, honestly, when I sat down here, I was like, oh, that's nice. I'll have a nice background. Then I was like, oh, my head is directly in front of it. People are mostly not going to see it. But yes, there we go. I just started making that, so it'll be more full probably in a couple weeks. But yeah, it's yarn. Thank you.
It's cool.
Okay, what position would I be in a pirate crew? Honestly, captain, but not because I want to be. No, not because I want to be. It's because either the other one died or or like literally no one else stepped up for the position.
Yeah, the rest would be like, no, we don't. No, Jordan.
No, thank you.
Jordan would be good.
Having the title El Capitan, yes, 100%. I would. That could be my Slack like status. I should set it as that at work. People would be very confused.
Like Karina.
Not true. Actually, the marketing team showed up to our weekly team meeting in pirate wear, in like a pirate skin. Yeah,
I love it.
Everybody was very confused.
Dressed as a pirate to my day job.
Can you imagine like going to a Zoom meeting like as pirate?
Yeah, just as a pirate. Honestly,
and somebody could reference that like lawyer. I'm not a cat. Like
yes, please. Oh my God, that's like literally my favorite video of 2020.
I feel sorry for anybody coming in on the later half of this chat. They're going to be like,
I'm still trying to think of what I'd ask a demonio for. So
okay, we'll circle back again if we have any.
I mean, I'd probably end up
to answer these questions too.
For me, I'd probably end up as the cabin person because I would probably be like somebody needs to clean this up and no one's doing it. So I guess
it's you. Congratulations on your new position.
With Jordan, how many coffee cups did I find in your cabin today? And there'd be me. I don't have any crushes. I just make coffee.
Or wine, or
not in the nest.
Oh, sorry.
I do like wine. Okay. Gabe, you have a Pride and Prejudice retelling coming out in 2024. Can you tell us anything about that one?
Yes, I can. So Most Ardently will be out winter 2024. When I pitch it to people on the fly, I like to say it's Pride and Prejudice but gay, which is honestly pretty accurate. And Most Ardently, the second eldest Bennett child, who is the protagonist, is Oliver Bennett, a trans boy who isn't yet out to most of his family. The famous Darcy, meanwhile, is much the same, except he's gay, and he isn't out yet either. So when we meet Oliver, he's living a dual life. On one hand, he has pretended to be a daughter with his family and at social events. But then at night, and sometimes when he can during the day, he sneaks out dressed as himself, as a boy, and he slowly gets to experience the world as himself and even get to know Darcy as a boy. But as his suitors become more aggressive and his mother continues to pressure him to marry, Oliver will have to choose whether to settle for safety and security and a life of pretending to be something he's not, or risk it all for a slim chance of freedom and love and a life that can be his own.
So you wrote a Pride and Prejudice retelling, a Regency romance, a queer trans Regency romance.
I sure did.
Question, do you have an ARC team, and how can I get on that?
Let's talk after.
I love Regency romance. Yeah, so that's going on my TBR early. It's only February, but you know what's cool about you having a 2024 release? The coolest thing?
What?
We get to live chat again.
Oh, yes. Fantastic. Can't wait. Let's do it.
Maybe I will have figured out what I want to ask a Devonio by then.
Okay. Oh, I thought you meant now.
No.
I got excited.
Well,
By 2024.
The next time we chat.
Gabe, is there anywhere that we can get signed copies of The Wicked Bargain?
Yes, the Porter Square Books in Cambridge, Massachusetts currently has some, though last I checked they had just 6 left, so if you want one, I would get on that.
Awesome. And I had asked this before, but will you be touring at all this year? Is there anywhere that people can do meet and greets?
Yeah, so it's not really safe for me to do in-person events due to the ongoing pandemic right now, but I do hope to be doing some virtual stops. I don't have anything officially lined up yet for the rest of the year, but I'll definitely announce on Twitter and Instagram when I do.
Awesome. And of course here, hanging out with us.
Yes, of course.
So no festivals this year. Hopefully next year. I'm hoping it kind of just,
I am hoping to, yes. Eventually, again, there will be opportunities and I will be there because I love the in-person events. They're great.
Did you do any when you were doing like YouTube stuff?
Yeah, well, I did some for some of my prior books written under my pseudonym. So I did the Boston Teen Author Fest, I think was the last event that I did, which was it's the last in-person event, but I did a couple things like that and they were super fun. I really love them. The festivals are great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you again for having me. This was so much fun.
I hope you'll come back.
I
was hesitant because everybody during the live was like, "Yeah, I'll come back." No,
not those crazy people. No,
I know, right?
It's fun.
I did want to let everybody in the nest know that I'm going to be chatting live on the 3rd with 2 of my bosses, Sil and Karina. Sil's the general manager, and Karina, of course, the founder of OwlCrate. And they're crashing the nest this Friday at 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And they're not going to be holding any punches on anything. We're just going to be dropping all the tea about everything that OwlCrate is doing this year. Yeah, no more side-eye emojis, guys. We're spilling all the tea on Friday. And of course, this year in the nest is stacked with tons of diverse indie and best-selling authors. Keep an eye on upcoming events by checking out the navigation menu. And remember that you can watch live chats just like this one with Gabe over and over again in the author chats and live streams folder in the menu. And watch out for these live chats as they're soon to be available on OwlCrate's YouTube channel. Happy reading and good night.